Thank you very much, Samson. Good morning, everyone. And as my colleague stated earlier, I would just say all protocols observed. For me, I think that this whole issue over the last 2 weeks, better put, has been a fairy tale. And everything around it has proven that, if anything at all, the ministry perhaps has a lot to hide, or just failing to be transparent, or perhaps not operating in the interest of our country. And I would just want to go over a few developments that gives me this conviction. First of all, I think this whole thing started by Giba issuing a very, very lengthy piece. What I received was a 26-page document, articulating concerns that the association has in relation to our digital terrestrial migration and all the issues that we now have gotten to know. Now, when that statement came out, what we heard from the Deputy Minister, Honorable George Anda, was that, well, we should ignore it because Giba is misinformed. The question that I immediately asked myself after reading Giba's statement and knowing that Giba had written to the ministry on a number of occasions without even an acknowledgement was that who should have informed Giba? So if you are now telling us that Giba is misinformed about the issues, who had the responsibility to inform Giba on the issues? 2, after Giba raised these issues, days later, the ministry issued a statement to respond to the, whatever Giba had put out there. But on Saturday last week, the minister was saying, look, I cannot find the issues. What is Giba, what are the issues? And that was after the president of Giba had made a submission, articulated the concerns and all of that. And the minister still said, I'm at pains to establish what the issues are. And my question was, if there were no issues, why did you issue a statement yesterday to respond to Giba's statement? Now, apart from that, the minister says there's no contract. Her deputy had said there's no contract, but there's an MOU. The question was, what is the difference? There's an MOU with Star Times to do an expansion of the digital migration infrastructure. So the question was, what is the difference? If somebody has had an MOU to implement an activity, and we all do sign MOUs, for projects. So one was at pains to establish what the differences, are or were. But of course, now we know that a contract has been done. So why were we being told that there isn't any contract? We point to examples in Malawi, in Zambia, in Kenya, and the minister says, look, Ghana is not Malawi, Ghana is not Kenya. But if you take the Zambian story, for example, in 2013, the Zambian government signed a contract with Star Times. In that same year, later in that same year, the contract was cancelled due to issues that the government says, look, we don't think that you are better placed to deliver this contract. Subsequently, a year later, Star Times is re-awarded the contract. And as we speak, Star Times has the mandate to manage the Zambian Broadcasting Corporation for the next 10 to 15 years. I'm told it's even 25 years. So I'm talking about, in our case, that would be GBC, the Ghana Broadcasting Corporation. So how can we be traveling in the same vehicle, driven by the same driver, Star Times, with the same interest, with the same objective, and we say that the destination will be different? Certainly, we are headed for the same, troubles that Zambia, Malawi, Kenya, and other countries are experiencing. And then, of course, for me, it's extremely worrying when you have parliamentarians, say, we were not aware about the tax waiver. Because on Saturday, for example, the minister emphatically saying, and of course that is the truth, that it is Parliament that has the mandate to grant a tax waiver, and it is Parliament that granted the tax waiver to Star Times. So what are the issues? And now if you have, members of that same house say, look, we were not aware of this waiver, and of course I do acknowledge that Honorable Sam George is from the minority side, but I don't want to believe that if you take the finance committee, it is only made up of people from the majority side. Of course, I'm sure your colleagues will be on that side. So if there are any questions, I believe that you may even want to ask your members from your side who are on the finance committee, why did they find it prudent to grant that tax waiver? I don't want to go into the issues of the merits or demerits of the tax waiver because other speakers have already spoken about it. And then it's also worrying when you have the chairman of the subcommittee in Parliament that is in charge of this sector, the Communications Subcommittee, Honorable Kennedy Japan, say, for example, and I heard him yesterday say, the issues or what GIBA is doing is, first of all, ugly noises, and GIBA is being politically manipulated. Now, for me, what is more surprising is that Kennedy Japan is the owner of Ken City Media. And Ken City, that operates Net2 TV and Oman FM, are members of GIBA. And indeed, not too long ago, Mrs. Japan was an executive council member of GIBA. So if now we are being told that GIBA is being politically manipulated by the NDC, is it a case that Mrs. Japan, and her folks are being manipulated? And of course, that points to, and then finally, on these issues of pointing to the fact that it's been a journey of fairy tales, is this smart thing by Star Times they are calling the 300 Villages Project, that we now know the first beneficiary village is in Dansoman. And of course, if you are told that the first community or the first village to benefit from the 300 Villages Project is in Dansoman, we may all want to go and see this beautiful village in Dansoman. But having said that, substantively, I think that for me, as somebody working with the Media Foundation for West Africa, over the last 6 months, the biggest conversations we've been having has been the sustainability of our media industry. And I loved it when the president of GIBA started his statement by saying that he always wants to sound a bit diplomatic. And I think if there was anything diplomatic or anything that GIBA failed to point out, which of course I'm sure they know, is the fact that they failed or they deliberately left out the point that what is of significant concern is the businesses of GIBA members. And that is the reality. And I don't think that we should shy away from that, because these are Ghanaian companies. These are companies that are employing thousands of Ghanaians. And I believe people from the ministry have said, look, GIBA is only fronting for its business interests. What else should they have been fronting for? And this is a Ghanaian association made up of broadcasters in Ghana, employing Ghanaian young people, and so on and so forth. Now, last year in August, we heard that TV3 had laid off 100 workers. Just this month, we've heard that TV Africa is closing a number of on-air programs. Just last month, we heard that EIB Network is set to lay off more than 100 of its staff. I believe that if you are a government, you should be worried about these developments. And perhaps what you may want to begin to think about is how can we support the media industry to be sustainable? Because if for nothing at all, Ghanaians are losing jobs. Young men and young women are losing jobs. And indeed, the issue of unemployment is a big thing here in our country. And then, of course, I earlier alluded to the fact that it's about the businesses of GIBA members. And that certainly should be of interest to any government. Because on Saturday, I was surprised when the minister said on the news file program that, do you know what happened when the government of Ghana decided to cancel the contract with Star Times? Do you know why the Eastern Corridor Road project stalled? Do you know that that affected China-Ghana relations, and certain facilities that were meant to be extended to Ghana were all stalled just because of the cancellation of the contract with Star Times? My question to her was, I know that Star Times is not a Chinese state company. It is not a company owned by the Chinese state. It is a company owned by private Chinese people. It's a private Chinese company. So if the Chinese government would take actions to demonstrate that it wants to further the interest of its companies originating from China, why would we not want to do same for companies that are in Ghana? And linked to that is the fact of the KNet contract. And my question was, is it the case that KNet was consulted and they indicated that they don't have the capacity to deliver the expansion that we now want to give away to StarTimes? Or is it because, certain fruits are being, financial inducements are being dangled at us, and we thought that, what we need to do is to go for, whatever the Chinese government is offering. And certainly, from all indications, I think there's just one thing, that we are going in for this because China has tied this as a condition to certain facilities that they are extending to our country. And for me, again, if there is anything that I love about what our president says, is this whole idea of Ghana beyond aid. And I would have wished and hoped that at this stage, where we are really vigorously pursuing a Ghana without aid, we would not allow ourselves to be manipulated by any aid coming from any country to do things that would not be in the interest of our nation and would not be in the interest of our citizenry. And finally, as George said, I believe and I hope that our ministry and our government will listen so that they wouldn't take these steps that they are taking that ultimately will be detrimental to the local media industry, as is currently happening in Malawi, in Zambia, and in Kenya. Thank you very much.